This is the Smooth Breakfast on Smooth 98.1. Love music, love life on a rainy Monday morning. It's 32 minutes past 7 a.m. Wherever it is that you are listening, you are most welcome to the smoothest dial on Lagos Radio. This is where we get to get into the papers, talk about the headlines, take a look at the stories making the rounds, get analysis, and of course, perspective as well. And who can forget your messages coming through on the stories we'll be talking about this morning. Welcome along to the show. Ayokunmi here. Alongside me is my analyst for this Monday morning, ready to give his thoughts, perspective, analysis as well. AB Bozimo is joining me. Very good morning to you, AB. Welcome on the show.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning to all of the wonderful listeners out there. Great to join you.
Absolutely fantastic to have you on a Monday morning. It's raining over here, so this is the time to get all the interesting stories, all the spice, and get things heated up on the smooth breakfast this morning. A number of things to get into. But before we do that, just to let you know that you can join us on the conversation, as always, by sharing your thoughts with us on WhatsApp. The number remains 0809 444 0981. 0809 4440981. That is the WhatsApp number. You can also join us on YouTube. We're streaming live at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Smooth 981 FM Lagos. All right, AB, let's start journey this morning in the Punch newspaper, where former President Olusegun Obasanjo has been speaking, and he said that the country needs to do something urgently on insecurity, which he said has taken over some parts of the nation. Now, he stated this in Bauchi State on Sunday, where he inaugurated road projects constructed by Governor Bala Mohammed. Now, he said that insecurity in Nigeria today is worse compared to his time in office, when he prioritized the security of lives and property across the country. If you're speaking here, he also mentioned that and insisted that community policing, where members of communities know their neighbors, adding that this was very crucial to easily identifying and addressing security threats within our communities. What are your thoughts on this one, Amy?
Definitely, President Obasanjo has never been one to shy away from expressing his candid opinion. You may or may not like what he says, but you would never find him shying away from a position. And I like the fact that while he highlights the fact about how insecurity definitely appears to be much worse now, you're talking of hearing of people dying in the tens, the 20s, the hundreds sometimes, people being kidnapped in scores. He's also making a suggestion. I think it's not a suggestion that's new to anybody, about the value perhaps of community policing. I would argue that since we are going down such a nasty path right now, what is the point in doing the same thing as we have always done in terms of improving our security? Since right now security is on the decline, we could, in fact, I argue that we should add community policing to one of the other methods of improving security in our communities, because he is correct that in general, there is a higher chance of people in a community, especially in an organized manner, having a better sense of who may or may not be up to no good. Now, the corollary to that always is that sometimes that can create bands of prejudice where people now identify who they say are outsiders. But that community policing has to be within a proper legal framework. And I believe when properly constituted, it can add to security in the communities and therefore around the nation.
I fully agree with you on that one, AB. But of course, we've had this conversation a number of times about community policing, and of course, the arguments that it could be used as an instrument by state governors to further their own agendas, or it could be misused. If the wrong people are heading out. So many different stories have actually come into play. But like you said, doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result is not by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, this is the point. This is the point where something else needs to be considered. Now, looking at all those arguments against community policing, I mean, wouldn't there be answers to those questions or those points raised for not wanting it to come into being?
That is the thing. You see, when you are considering a policy like this, it would be critical to invite and engage with all perspectives. And in any other policy framework, create a risk management framework to deal with some of these potential negatives, keeping in mind that the ultimate positive would be better security. I think there are ways to mitigate against the negatives to achieve the positive. Net positive, improved security for me is a worthwhile goal to pursue.
The positives can outweigh the negatives. All right, interesting thoughts there, AB. Okay, let's head into our next story coming out of the Vanguard newspaper, and it is all about power. Now, the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, has said it will implement a backup system to prevent nationwide blackouts in the event of a national grid collapse. Now, TCN's managing director, Sule Abdulaziz, revealed this during an appearance on TV. Now, he attributed the current grid failures to the outdated infrastructure, some of which has been in place for over 50 years. And it's interesting that he's talking about now implementing a backup system. I mean, this is not the first grid collapse that we're going to have this year. We've had probably 6 or 7 grid collapses in 2024 alone. Now, is this now the time to talk about, oh, we are going to implement a backup system? Yes, he has highlighted issues, outdated infrastructure, some of which has been in place for over 50 years. I mean, in any organization, in any industry, having infrastructure that have been there for 50 years is ridiculous on its own. But come on.
Now, you know how I feel about we will soon stories, how we plan to, how we intend to, how we hope to. All those kind of stories to me almost do not merit news coverage, because ideally, I'd like to hear news of how we have actually achieved or implemented a certain policy. That said, he's talking about a backup system which will hopefully create redundancy in the system. Right now, I believe the system is stretched so thin that once there's a fault somewhere, the excess demand immediately overwhelms the rest of the grid and brings the entire system down. His reports that the project is ongoing and it has reached 70% completion. He did not give any indication of when the next milestone, benchmark, or completion would be. So it remains, and it shall sometime one day in the future in our imagination come real. They also talk about how some of the infrastructure has been in place for over 50 years. I would argue that that is not my problem. A country that prioritizes luxury and consumption in the form of wasteful remuneration to lawmakers and all that, rather than implementing replacement of infrastructure, should not look to me as a citizen or a consumer with that as any form of excuse. We have had so many opportunities to gradually upgrade this equipment. I look inside the budgets each year. I don't really see a section as prominent in terms of updating our electricity infrastructure as I see in throwing billions at the National Assembly and the presidency. So please spare me with that story. He was talking, when somebody came from, was it from Germany? He said that people in Band A are reportedly enjoying 24-hour electricity. I wonder what they enjoyed during that grid collapse recently. But, far be it for me to question him. At the end of the day, this is a story that is still a figment of the imagination. When it is completed and it is working, I would be happy to return to talk about it. Right now, this is an administrative briefing that I do not feel is worth the paper it may have been printed on.
An administrative briefing. I mean, it's very mind-boggling looking at where we are right now in 2024, talking about the power sector. I mean, the Minister of Power, that's Adebayo Adila, he was speaking sometime in August, if my memory serves me correctly, and he mentioned that Nigeria was only able to add 2,000 megawatts of power to the national grid since 1984. 1984 is 40 years ago. So, I mean,
I
looking at
want to
those
go further.
numbers,
I want to go further to say the last sentence in the story is one of a recurring set of annoying sentences. He said, this man is Mr. Abdulaziz, the TCN managing director, said that electricity in Nigeria remains more affordable than in neighboring countries like Chad, Mali, Burkina Faso, and other African nations. We are tired of hearing these comparisons that mean nothing. That is more affordable and is not available is irrelevant. Let it be made available. Let meters be provided and you amortize the cost of the meter. You don't create a meter acquisition as one of the problems that a person must overcome just to be properly metered. So we have too many policies floating around and we're not getting very much anywhere.
Definitely not getting much anywhere, not getting what it is that we deserve. Kingsley from Isola on WhatsApp says the issues bedeviling Nigeria are not issues that require innovation. Just simply check where the issues have been solved. Simply copy and paste. I mean, it seems so very straightforward, but when you look at Nigeria, and you just wonder, but this
Ayo,
this
sorry.
this seems to
Ayo,
be the way to go now.
Ayo, we copied and pasted presidential jets. We're copying and pasting, but we are choosing what to copy and paste.
Choosing what to copy and paste. Okay, D from Ikeja says, insecurity in Nigeria appears to be non-existent. Take Lagos, for example. A lot of Lagosians have been victims of thieves who use private cars, public buses, and bikes to rob and cause harm to people. The government and police are doing nothing about this. We are sitting ducks being picked off at will and with ease by these ruthless hunters. Adeboye Gadidiji says, I get tired talking about insecurity when you and I know why we're experiencing it. We keep talking about it, no actions, no improvement, no scapegoats, no sincerity. Again, we are sounding like broken records. This isn't rocket science, for goodness sake, but we tend to make it a complex situation so as to prolong the narrative. And collapse of the power grid without consequences or making someone a scapegoat doesn't make sense. Well, I mean, 3 times in a week, but here we are, still wondering and waiting. Let's take a quick breather on Freshly Pressed this morning. When we come back, we'll take a story coming out of the Guardian talking about our refineries. Yes, our refineries once again are in the news. Keep it tuned to Smooth 98.1. Niger.
Now, why?
I don't know how or why we think miraculous doing things that you did yesterday that didn't work will work today.
Repeating them ad infinitum, especially, I mean, when you look at the national budget, you can see where the priorities lie. It lies in all sorts of meaningless acquisitions. So don't tell me we will, we shall. I beg, I don't want to hear. Come on, that story for where I did. I mean,
All right, welcome back into Freshly Pressed on a Monday morning on Smooth 98.1, your love music, love live station. It's the Smooth Breakfast. Ayokunmi here. Alongside me is my analyst for this morning. It's AB Bozimo. We have been looking at the stories making the rounds in the papers. And of course, we're taking your thoughts as well. So you can send those messages in to us on WhatsApp on 0809 444 0981. Also join us on YouTube. We're streaming live at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Smooth 981 FM Lagos. All right, AB, welcome back into the show. Let's jump into the Guardian. And of course, like I mentioned before, that quick breather, our refineries are in the news once again. But anyways, A Lagos lawyer, Abdul Ghani Imran, has submitted a Freedom of Information FOI request to the Nigeria National Petroleum Company Limited, seeking details about the status of Nigeria's four government-owned refineries. Now, this request comes in light of a recent increase in the price of premium motor spirit PMS and is prompted by a report from the House of Representatives ad hoc committee, which claims that the federal government has spent approximately 11.35 trillion naira on refinery rehabilitation since 2010. AB 11.35 trillion naira on rehabilitation, turnaround maintenance, and so on and so forth. The refineries haven't even turned, let alone turned around, since 2010 till now.
Listen, when I'm very delighted to hear people who have this innate capacity, power, and skill, like lawyers, filing this. Now, any citizen can file an FOI, let's make it clear. But I would argue that lawyers are gifted with a deep understanding of the techniques of some of these things. So when a lawyer, what's that thing that they say? Lawyer will say, trouble na my work. When a lawyer files something like this, it's different from any other citizen because I may be turned around by policy. A lawyer knows exactly what those policies are. I always laugh. My wife, I call her the queen of fine print. Lawyers know what is involved at the nitty-gritty level. So he's saying if indeed a formal report from Nigeria's height, the height of Nigeria's legislature says that we have spent 11.35 trillion naira, please state to us how this money was spent and tell us about the state of the refineries. Don't forget that there's one refinery in Port Harcourt right now that each day keeps being postponed. This is on rehabilitation and maintenance. So they didn't say on the NMPC for their overheads and for their staff. This is just supposedly on the turnaround maintenance. So a lawyer has filed. Let's now see whether the NMPC will respond, because I don't want to hear security. If there's anything, it is a lack of security not to have functioning refineries. You cannot tell me that for security reasons you cannot produce the information. So I am delighted to hear this. He sent the message straight to Mr. Group Chief Mele Kyari, my favorite person to call and wonder why he still has a job, since he is unable to do the single thing he is supposed to do, make our refineries work. But I don't stop at his level. If he still has the job, it is because his supervising minister, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the fundamental Minister of Petroleum, has proven himself to be unable to do that element of his job, to be the Minister of Petroleum. So if there's blame, it should be laid squarely at the desk of President Tinubu. Now, we shall see whether this FOI request will be complied with. But at the end of the day, I am not holding my breath, but I like the fact that a lawyer is using the tools readily at his disposal to ask for this, and we shall follow this hopefully to see if anything comes out of it. It just shows you the irresponsibility. 11.35 trillion could literally build us a new oil system. We're not talking about a refinery, that brand new wells, brand new barrels, brand new ships to carry it, brand new everything. But you tell me that you spend this and we don't have one single out of 1, 2, 3, 4 working. This is a crime scene. Nigeria is a crime scene in that regard. I didn't stutter.
All right, let me take a couple of messages here before they pile up. This is Jonathan from Marlborough City, and he says, on the grid collapse, this was how our refineries collapse started. Just like a joke, we don't have a functional refinery. I mean, we should just talk about this. Very soon, the wicked and unreasonable enemies of this great nation will soon push for the importation of power from only God knows where. Um, President Tinubu is back in the country. With President Tinubu coming back into the country, I'm guessing you mean will not make any difference, rather more pain and hardship for Nigerians. The APC has nothing good to offer the country. Michael says, on power, an orange seller's family should be able to enjoy oranges at little cost. How much revenue is being generated from supply to other countries. Where is the revenue going to? I think this power thing is spiritual. Michael, it's called power. It has to be spiritual at the end of the day. Joseph Menyes says corruption is like systemic cancer in Nigeria. Here, the power minister saying a private power company is producing at a cost of 750 naira per kilowatt hour. The national grid continuously keeps collapsing, just like Ajakuta steel mill and refineries always getting funds injected for better performance and steady improvement. But no, the money keeps disappearing without any punishment for those who are involved in the misappropriation. That is what boggles the mind. I mean, looking at these numbers, scary numbers, 11.35 trillion naira in
Trillion
14
naira.
years and no results. Okay, okay, we keep looking. All right, on to another story coming out of this day newspaper. The Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Senator Abubakar Bagudu, at the weekend said the ongoing reforms by the federal government would improve the country's economy. Now, the minister gave the assurance when he received a delegation from the Chambers of Commerce and Industry, CCI, that's from Gretchen Friedberg in Germany, at his office in Abuja. Now, he said some risks were taken by President Bola Tinubu to make the country to work well. AB.
I will not waste much time on this story for the same reason I said before. FG reforms will. I have said this once at least before. When somebody is cooking a meal, very often from the preparation of the ingredients and from the scent of the kitchen, you can tell if the food will taste well. Right now, even the World Bank has warned the Nigerian government against profligacy. Profligacy, if you don't know what it means wastefulness. You cannot, on one hand, be putting all sorts of policies, removing all sorts of safety nets, applying all sorts of pressure on people, while at a government level, all of you are living the lives of the rich and famous, and then telling me that it will end well. Will we be alive to see it at that point? I'm sorry, the leadership is not showing that they have a single connection with what the people are going through. And so these promises to me are utterly devoid of care and are empty. So Bagudu said it, he's saying it to himself because the average person on the street, I will not speak, I, as I am, don't care for one word he said. I have said that even I could argue the policies, the positives and the policies, but the implementation is heedless. In my narrow sphere of architecture, if I'm building a house and I rush to put the cement mixed together for the foundation, you cannot trust whatever I build on top. I need to take care, particular care with my foundation so that whatever is built on top will stand. Right now, we just withdraw this, withdraw that, apply taxes. That is not how you do a good foundation for what they claim will happen. Enough said. I have zero respect or regard for the content of that story.
All right, let me do a couple of messages here. They're just coming in, left, right, and center. Lagos, Nigeria, the world. I want to talk this morning. Ajayi Olonilua says the TCN mulling the idea of a backup system for the national grid is a non-starter, as the meager power being generated is fed into a single transmission line for the whole country, instead of power being generated to cover specific areas like it's done in organized countries. We organized? Question to ask. Fabian from Ekwe says, it's high time that those in charge of our public facilities and institutions take responsibility for their failures and act to improve things or step aside. We are tired of their making comparisons with countries doing poorly when it comes to making excuses, and the opposite when it comes to increasing taxes, PMS, and investing in white elephant projects. All right, thank you, Fabian, for sharing your thoughts. Barrister Dan Okuda says, with the billions of naira spent on the turnaround maintenance of the refineries, trillions, not billions, trillions. What is the final outcome? We're not as serious. We're not serious as a people. All right. Okay, AB, let's get back into the stories, and we are going to take this one coming out of the Vanguard real quick here, and it has to do with the flooding situation now in Benue State. Now, the rapidly rising water level of River Benue has submerged numerous houses and farmlands in Makurdi, the Benue State capital, displacing hundreds of families, particularly those living 1 or 2 kilometers off the riverbank. Now, over the weekend, the Vanguard observed that several areas, including the Agwan Chukun community in Wurukum, Kilometer 3, near the judges' quarters, Wadata, Giadu Villa, and Agbohul, have all been flooded by the rising waters. And I know that we talk about flooding a lot. We've talked about Borno State recently, the devastation that happened over there. But AB, I mean, talking about Benue State now, a number of people, residents said they left their residential areas, remembering past flooding incidents caused by the release of excess water from the Lagdo Dam in Cameroon. But when are we ever going to get to a point where people do not need to think about, oh, the Lagdo Dam is going to be open, water is going to come, we need to leave our homes, we need to leave our places of comfort, of safety? When are we going to get to a point where Nigerians don't have to be thinking along those lines?
A major solution to a lot of this flooding is right in front of us. Dredge the river, Benue Valley, and Niger. But we always choose not to. This flooding started, they opened that dam maybe a month plus ago, and the water is gradually coming down, making its presence felt now. Next thing we hear is happening in Lokoja, Kogi area, of course, going down into and through the Niger Delta. We have chosen not to, dredge. I think the lowest hanging fruit is dredge the river. Because I'll make this example for you. If you open a tap and you put a plate under the running stream or a bucket, which one tends to splash water out more? The plate. So if you are to make the river deeper, it's not as if the water won't come, but at least it'll have more area to flow through. Right now, the sand has made it so that you hear what they said. People who are living within 1 or 2 kilometers, I don't know about you, I walk. 1 kilometer is not a near distance. 2 kilometers from the water bank, that means the water has just spread flat and wide. Now, we had the former president ask for a report in 90 days. Nobody bothered to listen to him. This president has come. His priority is to make coastal highway. That money voted could be what is used to dredge and to start a dam. The higher hanging fruit is to build a dam to help control this. But the lowest hanging fruit, just dredge river. And when you dredge river, you get sand. That sand has value in construction. But no. Instead, what did we do as they entered? They approved bulletproof jeeps for different people. And that is what I complain about. They just vote money for pointless projects, then come and tell me they will soon. I reject such preachments because they mean nothing. Now people are going to suffer. It's going to come from Benue, go down to Kogi, go down through Edo, go down through Delta, and find its way out to Niger Delta. And it's happening again, and nobody is saying or doing anything about it. People are suffering. But somebody will come and tell me these reforms are going to make the country better. Do what you have to do first at the lowest hanging fruit level. Then we begin to believe that you have some sense of what Nigerians are going through. Right now, I see no connection between the leadership and the led.
All right, let's round up with some messages. Puza from Surulere says, until Nigerians hold the federal government accountable for not making our refineries work, we'll continue to suffer on what God has abundantly blessed us with. Federal government is just paying lip service to everything we need to be enjoying. May God help Nigeria. Tony from Marine Beach says, when we talk about the power grid collapsing, I ask, is Nigeria itself standing? The petroleum sector has become like executives' personal business, and since Buhari era, the president has been at the helm of affairs where we've experienced the worst of failures in successive years in the sector, showing clearly they are not working for Nigerians. They're like the energy sector, like the power sector. They're the switch used in the conspiracy against the masses. Damilola from Lagos Island says, to AB, the federal government needs to get out of the business or duty of managing the national grid, or any grid for that matter. This should be done by the private sector, who will be more efficient and result-oriented. Gilbert Musa says, on the statement by the power minister saying that we have added 2,500 megawatts of power to the national grid since 1984, let us ask what happened to the 25 billion naira investment of over 19 contracts of transmission lines and substations across the country in 2004? Where is the result of this contract? Who are those in charge of this contract? And Adesunji from Ikeja says, I wonder when politicians compare Nigeria to its neighbors, why why do they compare USA to its neighbors like Mexico, the most clueless and insincere set of people? And AB and Tony says, food for thought, has one block of cement or concrete been molded and or laid for the Lagdo Dam since the flooding of the last year of the Buhari administration? We deserve this nonsense. We don't deserve this nonsense. So Tony, lives are being lost. But I get what you're trying to say. Thank you so much for the message. And thank you, AB, for joining me this morning on Freshly Pressed. Always a pleasure having you.
Thank you. The privilege and pleasure are both mine. You guys have a wonderful Monday and the week ahead. God bless you.
All right. God bless you. God bless Nigeria as well. Lagos, keep it tuned to Smooth 98.1. The locker room will come about 8:15. Tech will be in for that one. It's sports all the way.